This is the ATI Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the ATI Podcast. We are Season 2, Episode 20. I think it's the 73rd episode overall, and I am Barrett, host of the ATI Podcast. And, of course, we have Brandon with us. He's not Josh. He's Brandon.
Hey, y'all. Yeah, not Josh.
He's co-hosting today from Edaw's Inn. You guys are familiar with this cat. How's it been going, Brandon?
Oh, it's been going good, Barrett. It's been going good. I heard that Josh was doing something today, and I'm live on scene. I believe he said he was doing a humanitarian effort. Yeah,
he's really overburdened with his philanthropic work lately. He couldn't make today's show. He's a man who leads an opulent lifestyle, but he never lets that get in the way of his humanitarian efforts, of course. So I know that you've got word on, like, literally the task that's at hand right now that was so important that he couldn't be here.
Right, Barrett. I've just gotten off out of a meeting with President Joe Biden. It appears that Joshua has volunteered himself as a human pocket pussy for prisoners who have been in prison for marijuana possession.
Oh, wow. What a relief. Because
yes,
he's got the faculties. He's got the faculties.
They had a great agreement. Him and President Joe Biden. Of course, he had to test out the product. Sorry, there's a little bit of helicopter noise going on.
They both pop out their dentures.
Yes. No. Yeah. It appears as though they've removed their dentures. It's gone below the desk, Barrett. It's gone below the desk. We thought that President Biden was going to allow a lot of these members of, or a lot of these prisoners around the United States to get out of prison for stupid menial weed charges to be released. But it appears that he's just letting them fuck Josh. That's the.
Well,
he's not paying him. This just in. He's not paying him.
Oh, wow.
He's not paying him.
So you can't call him a whore. Can't call him that.
He's not a whore.
Not a prostitute.
He's not a whore.
No. Just a humanitarian.
Right.
You know?
Back to you, Barrett. I got to watch.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
All right. You go do that. Word on the street is nobody's sunk to the depths that Josh Welch has, except for that Titanic sub that they just found. All right, so folks, that's a little taste of what you're in for today. Yeah, absolutely. Thoughts and prayers. So today we are going to get to talk to Ann Wood, which I'm really excited about. And Ann is somebody that kind of got on our radar some time ago, I know. Actually, through Brandon specifically, he kind of recommended me check out her artworks and her website and her credentials. And boy, this fucking work's incredible, Brandon.
Yeah, it's freaking insane. The first thing that comes to my head is Midsummer, and
sure.
It's.
I was getting kind of Annihilation vibes too from some of the work.
100%. I think just the amount, and we were talking about this before the podcast, but the amount of detail that's placed in it, you would have to fully be there to actually see every single one of them. But like we talked about, every time that we look at it, we see something different within. And I'm fascinated by just the use of her nature within every single thing that she does.
Right.
And it definitely has that dark element, so it always adds to it.
Certainly. And, there isn't like other connections that I made necessarily even coming into this, but, doing some of my research on her, and I'm going to be curious to pick her brain about inspirations and things like that. But, I know she'd done like a podcast within the last couple of years where they reviewed Marie Antoinette, the Sofia Coppola movie from the mid 2000s, which is a really good film, but neither here nor there. But then I started thinking like some of the color palettes and things that she used in her artwork. I'm like, that's kind of translatable. So it's kind of, I'm wondering if she's not inspired by film, because those are the first correlations.
Victorian era, yeah, for especially that's the word I was searching for before, that Victorian era. That I mean it looks a lot. I don't know if you watched the show The Great, but The Great is it's that Victorian era in Russia, and Nicholas Holt's in it. I forget the main girl's name, but yeah, it's just got this pretty but dark sense to it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's the most layman's terms of putting it. But yeah,
it's gothic, kind of a gothic. I don't want to say chic to sound trendy or whatever, but gothic chic maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But she'd be the qualified person to tell us all about that. So we're going to get into that with Anne, of course. But we have to mention, of course, this is our fourth entry actually into Women's Month. It's one of those weird months where we get 5 Thursdays. So we kicked things off with Joey and Brandon actually was a part of that as well, talking about women who rock, some of our favorite women musicians over history and time. Second episode, we talked to Jackie Kelly this month about her work, excellent horror actress, modern day scream queen here from the Midwest. And then last week, we talked to Nixie XS about her professional wrestling career, which she's grown leaps and bounds and had all kinds of experiences just in the last 6 months, which is crazy. And she's just really beating the old dusty trail, as they say, up and down.
So she's just beating the shit out of people, is what you're saying?
Yes, that is also happening. There's some videos out there, man. She's laying her shit in, man. Like, I don't know that I'd be wanting to get some of them elbows. They look a little stiff.
And other people's shit in too.
I hear you.
Fucking putting it in there.
So we are on our fourth awesome woman here for this month, and of course, this is Women's Month. That's the thing we're doing here. So we're talking about some awesome ladies, just to honor them, feature them. Give them a platform maybe that their work hasn't had to this point, or at least expose them to a different audience, if nothing else. And, they come from multiple trades, focuses, backgrounds, practices. These ladies are multi-talented, as you'll see today with Anne. There's multiple stylistically implementations and mediums of art that she uses. So I think that she's going to be another great addition to Women's Month, Brandon.
No, most definitely. I nominated her specifically because I was blown away by her work. Her husband's great, pretty sexy guy. So
that always sweetens the deal.
Yeah, kind of sweetens it totally. And they're just a couple hours. Actually, I think they live in Galveston, so a few hours away from us, down on the coast.
All right, yeah, not too far away then. So we are actually going to get things kicked off as we usually do with some current events talk. And there's a lot of stuff going on in the world the last week. It's actually been kind of a crazy week. So many things we're getting in the woods. Some of these things we're just going to mention out of obligation. And some of those things that we're going to mention today are to get things started off, and kind of the most, I guess, mostly reported item at the moment. And that's going to be the Titanic Tourist Sub going down. Kind of joked about it earlier, but man, this has been...
Bunch of rich people. I think there were rich people finger banging each other in a Tic Tac.
Kind of, basically. Yeah, I mean, you kind of got the premise. That's why they used up all the oxygen so quick, and then they imploded on themselves. They had maximum climax, and then they imploded. So, and that's definitely how it went.
That's why you got to drill it from the outside to keep them.
There you go. Keep them from getting airlocked, right?
Yep.
So, so you kind of had the premise started correctly, and that's the fact that we've got all these rich people that got onto a submarine that, by all accounts and practices and almost everything that I've read, should not have been a submarine for tourists and should not have been traveling down to the depths that it did. And when you start hearing about some of the specifics with regards to this ridiculous incident, you scratch your head and you wonder, how is this even possible? But there's a lot of lawlessness that goes on out at sea, especially as you go into international waters and things like that. I know that the U.S. Coast Guard, there was a lot of strong language that you saw in various previous reports of incidents and concerns about these vessels. some of the most damning stuff that came out too. Brandon and I were talking about this before we started recording today. James Cameron, which I would consider an expert on the whole business, considering the fact that he did his research for Titanic, directed Titanic, and then following that did an amazing documentary as well, exploring the depths there and on the Titanic. And it's all these people have come out and talked about publicly that this company should not be operating as a tourist entity. There's a danger to going down to water in those depths and routinely taking people down there and exposing them to such an event, and just the crazy things that it even does to your body, your mind, that people don't think about. It's kind of the only thing that you can kind of equate it to, and people don't realize this, is like going into space. Those are extreme pressures that the human body cannot withstand without the proper protection. So, that those concerns are just of the most basic.
Right.
And
I think honestly, I was thinking about this because, it's been going on for the whole week. I was thinking about it, and it was like, they shouldn't have done that. They should have, blah, blah, blah. I'm glad they did it. Hey, good for you, bro. You did what you wanted. You paid the $250,000. You got the grand tour. Ends up the grand tour means you're gonna fucking die.
Yeah,
that's a way to go out. I mean, if anything,
people won't forget how they went out. That's for sure.
Yeah, they definitely. Nobody will forget that they went down to this broken up ship that went down a century ago, and it's been recorded on movies, on documentaries, but they just had to see it up close of this rusted ship where a bunch of other rich people and poor people, which is sad, died, so that they could say they did it. Right. Disposable income of $250,000. You could have fucking done anything with that motherfucker. Right. So, sure. I believe one of the guys backed out at the last second. Was like, "Fuck this shit."
Yeah. It's crazy that, I mean, I don't know, if I had $250,000 and it was a guaranteed two-way trip, not a one-way trip, I would spend the $250,000.
The fine print. It was actually backed up by Facebook.
Oh yeah, it was kind of like the Facebook terms and conditions, so they didn't really want to actually get into the weeds and read all the fine print. So they didn't realize that yes, they only paid for a one-way trip. So yeah, like when you're a billionaire and you spend that much money, that's just a drop in the pan, right? That's like us filling up a gas tank. People don't really realize how much money that actually is. But I guess ultimately what they found that took place is the submarine essentially got into an environment. Well, let me back up by saying the Coast Guard and other volunteer entities, I believe it was a French rover of some type that actually discovered the debris at first that was on the bottom of the ocean floor near the Titanic. But so that's how they first kind of implied what might have taken place with this vessel. But it was theorized and heavily, I guess at this point, I would call it beyond speculation, because they're finding pieces of the wreckage of this craft, and it imploded on itself. Yeah. Or I want to say it was early this morning, maybe mid-morning. They had already found pieces of the craft, and that's kind of what came across it. But now they're saying that the thing imploded on itself. And again, at those depths, it's over 13,000 feet down into the ocean. So, yeah, it's crazy to think it's that deep in the water.
Can you imagine it wasn't, I'm so sorry. But can you imagine just this, oh my God, I think we're close to it. Yeah. I can start to, and just, boom!
Yeah. Really the best case scenario could be is that they went down and these things immediately happened so quickly that, nobody realized what was happening. Like, Jesus. Really, that's kind of the sweet way to look at, like the nice way to look at it. But
yeah, they went out.
But when you're talking about your body, my wife was kind of like stressing this point to me, and it didn't really sink in until she was talking, kind of articulating it. She's like, you got to think what the human body does at those depths in each phase as you go into. And they're kind of like slowly feeling their body rejecting everything that's taking place, probably because of this shoddy craft down that deep. Like they probably went out the most horrific way and slowly and started like bleeding from their orifices and shit. And then all of a sudden it's scanners, heads start popping off one at a time.
That's like they're looking out the window and like, hey, Hey, Stockton, am I supposed to... Mine starts to... Oh, God, I spit up blood everywhere. What's this? I got a bunch of tears.
That's probably how it happened. I mean, it had to have probably at least with one of them. Right?
It was definitely Hellraiser in that fucking thing. You know that whole fucking thing just... If there wasn't water underneath it, there'd just be blood like fucking...
Oh, yeah. Woo! I mean, at that point, especially at that level, they were talking... That's one thing I didn't realize, too. I mean, like, we have some pretty strong rivers and currents around here. And you just think about, like, the undercurrent that you can get caught in those around here. Or if you've ever been to the ocean and there's a strong tide coming in and out. Like, think about how powerful that is. Well, those things actually happen that deep underwater as well. Like, there's undercurrents that people don't realize, and I think Cameron specifically was articulating like how bad. And there was another
this is volatile
reporter, right?
It's volatile around that area because of specifically that area,
that area in general geographically has a problem. Then it introduced the Titanic, which is of the most large vessels in recorded human history, is sitting down there, and it's manipulating the flow of water around it essentially as well. So there's like these all weird phenomenons going on under the water down at that level. So I gotta mention the other hilarious thing that's going on with this, as terrible as a thing it's been, is one of the billionaire's stepsons. He went to a Blink-182 concert and got attention because he was going around telling everybody that his stepdad was on the vessel that was missing.
Yeah.
And he went there to, I guess, cope with things, was his alleged explanation.
My uncle would have wanted me to do this. Or whoever he was.
My family, I think he just said, but it's his stepdad was on it. So then, that became popular. Well, Cardi B, the famous female rapper, had some commentary on it. So they got into an online battle. And I don't know if it was necessarily immediately while this was going on, or I don't know the exact timeline because I sometimes have to catch up on news, I guess people started going after this guy. Yeah. The guy started getting attacked online because people went to his personal profiles, specifically Twitter, and found that he was macking on OnlyFans chicks, but like getting sympathy out of the situation for the OnlyFans chicks. And so like he was exploiting the situation to get OnlyFans chicks to try and sleep with him. So he doesn't seem like real reputable, right? So this is kind of a whole kind of odd, hilarious. I don't know how you want to look at it. I look at it as both. Aside to this whole submarine thing that's going on, which is crazy. And the other thing we got to mention, battle with Cardi B.
Right. This is a bizarre world. So this is, I know we say this all the fucking time, but this is idiocracy. There's a situation going on where earlier on in the month, there were 700 migrants that died trying to make their way to Europe. No camera footage, no coverage, no blah, 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 blah. But then we got to sit and talk about these 5 fucking jackasses that went down in a unregulated pod down to the depths of the ocean in international waters, because they could do that in the international waters. And then this guy is fucking arguing, this nobody is arguing with Cardi B.
Right.
About, like, what planet is this?
Incredible, dude.
I hope it was an alien that killed those guys, only because of the sense that I want them to see how fucking stupid we are as a people.
Yeah.
That this is the situation right now.
Right. Yeah, this is the example for sure. The other weird thing with this, and I kind of wrap up our talk with this, because everybody, I'm sure, out there will talk it to death, and we're just trying to find the humor in a dark moment. That is that this fucking craft was steered, by all accounts and purposes, a knockoff, not even original, PS5 controller, a Logitech version of a PlayStation controller, wirelessly was controlling the submarine.
Yeah, and it wasn't even a newer one.
Yeah.
It was like an older model. Like,
right.
I'm looking at this fucking thing and I'm like, what? If I saw this motherfucker pull out a controller,
God,
initially I would be surprised by it. And then I might eventually go, wow, that's fucking insane that this You're piloting this whole fucking thing with the controller, and then that fucking survival instinct would kick in and go, "What the fuck am I doing?" This motherfucker has a made up fucking. He's piloting this. People pilot drones with better controllers than a fucking Logitech from fucking.
I was gonna say, like the thing that's hilarious about this is that the controller was fancier than the submarine itself. So that should have been the like, hey, can we back up real quick? Can you like take me back to the surface? You know?
Oh yeah. No. We can't do that because we've locked ourselves in from the outside. So you've just described to me, if they would have told me this, if they would have explained this to me, I would have been like, so you just put me in a casket because that's what caskets do.
Right.
There's no pull lever.
And Liam has now found the controller that is controlling the submarine.
Yeah.
And he is now he's gonna bring it back to the top.
He's bringing the expert analysis in. They go in and they pop, and I'm gonna go try and redirect him back up. He doesn't know the dead Barrett. We haven't talked about that yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry if I just let the cat out of the bag.
He was in charge of it.
So, Zuckerberg versus Musk. Have you seen this? Mark Zuckerberg has accepted the challenge of Elon Musk to cage fight. This is real life.
What is wrong with fucking Zuckerberg's? Is he trying to line up the top right here? Like, what is? Does he think
I don't know what's happening.
Does he think he's a different ethnicity?
I think he's trying to mock LeBron's haircut. Yeah.
Oh my god!
I got the LeBron hairline going, without question.
Oh god.
So these guys, of course, are like, bickering like two middle school girls online, back and forth with each other, and Zuckerberg's reply to Musk's tweet was, "quote unquote," send me a location. Whenever old dumbass Musk was like, "I'm up for a cage fight," and I'm like, "Dude, you are not a badass. There's nothing.
Send me a location.
Nothing about you. Yeah, send me a location." It's like, are you serious, man? Like, I really want to see Celebrity Deathmatch come back, but we're not doing claymation. We're for real putting foot on the gas pedal. We're going to bring Mills Lane back from the dead. He's going to rep this thing.
I already told you, I'm cool with it.
We're making it happen.
I'm cool with it.
Fight to the death.
Listen, if those two idiots want to get into a cage together, I'm just so curious what will happen. I don't know if I'm going to watch it to give them anything, whatsoever.
As long as they aren't getting the money from my pay-per-view, I'll pay to watch it. They're rich enough as it is. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Fight the system.
Yeah. I'm going to steal shit online.
The thing about this is that actually Zuckerberg, now whether or not people are just doing this because he gives them a lot of money, Zuckerberg has won medals in competitive Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's like he's won like gold and silver at recent tournaments. Like, I know he practices it. So maybe he's got something. Maybe he's got something there.
Movies have you watched where they're like, "Oh yeah, you did a really good job." What was that one? Foxcatcher, where they're like, "Yeah, you did such an amazing job." And it's because he's like the big boss. I picture him fucking.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. And hey, man, cool if that's what you're into, but don't be a.
But that guy also went to jail, I think, or killed himself.
No, he killed himself. Yeah, DuPont. Yeah, he come from a very wealthy family. Generations of they had wrestling teams, successful wrestling teams. They had a lot of money in like lacrosse or some type of fox hunting. That's why they got with the Foxcatcher name. Like, they were like old money shit was going on there. And DuPont was a fucking nut. If anybody's not seen Foxcatcher, just check that out. But there's documentaries out there. Mark, I believe was his name, was the younger brother. They were actually Olympic wrestlers, but Mark Ruffalo, coincidentally, and Channing Tatum played in the film as well as Steve Carell. Yeah, check it out.
I think the creator of that submarine too was from Old Money as well. He used to go. There's like a club in San Francisco that's Bohemia Club.
Mm-hmm.
And
Bohemian Grove?
No joke. This is no joke. But there's a lot of weird shit that goes behind that and old money and shit.
Bohemian Grove. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. That's what
I just know the specific club is Bohemia Club.
Yeah.
But
he's a part of that one world government shit, motherfuckers. You better watch out. All seeing eyes, seeing everybody right now.
Skull and bones. While
we're talking about fights, we got to talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene and Boebert. Once best friends, the Bratz sisters from the trailer park themselves, double trailer park Barbie, now are at odds with each other. And so what's going viral right now is, it's basically reality TV. And don't be surprised if once they're out of Congress, there isn't a fucking reality show with these two. Boebert and MTG are both fighting on the floor here, and I believe this happened actually yesterday specifically. And you want to know why? And Marjorie Taylor Greene called her, quote, her being Boebert, a little bitch.
Yeah, a little bitch.
That's what people caught on camera were able to decipher. So they were both asked about it after the fact. They both didn't want to comment about it. But then later, MTG's publicist or somebody in her office confirmed the fact that she called her a little bitch. Here's the reason why. MTG says that Boebert stole her articles of impeachment that she was bringing against Biden. So she plagiarized them. That is what they're fighting over. Right. These are the same people on the same side of things that have the same opinion. I don't know if it's like a singular opinion, like it's a hive mind thing, or these are original thoughts and they just have parallel thoughts.
I actually could believe the hive mind thing, but I think that it's been like infected by a virus, like a deep orange virus.
Yeah, absolutely. It sets in the skin and
toupee and
kind of like jaundice.
Yeah. Good. I love the infighting. That's great. They should, they're doing the exact opposite of what they should be doing, which is coming together.
Right.
MTG, was probably that chick that was like, okay to look at her husband, at Lauren Boebert's husband's dick.
Right.
Even though her husband was like, you're too old. You're too old. Get away. I prefer 12-year-olds. But do what you will. Right.
A funny aside, two things on Lauren Boebert. Lauren Boebert, I guess she was like business parties with somebody in Colorado. I remember coming across this story, and it turns out like there's some accusations coming against her that she was like trying to steal this gal's husband or whatever. Like they had a falling out. So, but she was formerly a call girl, mind you. So keep that in mind. And then also another funny aside on Lauren Boebert that recently came out.
No shame on sex.
Right. Again, we talked about it on what we thought, as far as our presidential policies, ATI Podcast for president, we were talking about the fact that should be legalized. Right. So, it's a callback to last season, folks. Episode 41, if you want to check it out.
That's probably the only redeeming quality that she has.
Truthfully. So, actually, another funny aside that came out here in recent weeks as well, that Lauren Boebert, it was like theorized, and actually she was told by her own mother that she was the daughter of ex-professional wrestler Stan Lane, of the Midnight Express of the 1980s fame, and was managed by Jim Cornette, possibly the greatest manager of all time, and one of the best minds in the business, but that's neither here nor there. But so they finally had a paternity test. And it finally came clean at the beginning of this month that Stan Lane is not her father because he's been trying to fight this for years and does not want to be identified with her specifically. So that's pretty fucking hilarious too. If anybody hasn't seen that, they should check it out. But yeah, it's fucking hilarious. But it's well known that Lauren Boebert's mom, which coincidentally she ended up in sex work herself, was what they call a ring rat, which is a hooker for professional wrestlers. And she slept with all of the professional wrestlers in a territory and claimed to have been impregnated by them and tried to exploit them. So
she got a different kind of autograph.
Absolutely.
Is what you're saying.
So we've got three other big news topics we're going to try and fit in here in just a couple minutes. So we'll do some quick hits. Of course, Republicans are going after Adam Schiff because he led the articles of impeachment against Trump. In the House, they voted to censure him. We'll see how things progress along with that. It's something to keep a pulse on. Obviously, this is huge politics 101 bullshit. They aren't going after George Santos and their own party, who has lied countless amount of times, is literally a fake person. That's not even his real name. Look it up. Yeah.
Yep.
So, don't be fooled by that shit going on. And while we're still talking politics, we have to mention the fact that Hunter Biden took a guilty plea on federal tax charges and for an illegal gun that he actually had in his possession. Funny enough, when he was going into the court proceedings and things of that ilk, he is now looking so much more like his dad. It's unreal. I don't know if you took note of that. He's kind of let everything kind of go gray and slicking his hair back, and he's balding kind of like his dad did. And he's rocking the beard is like the only difference in the tan. Otherwise, he actually looks like his dad's younger brother almost. He's like aged so hard too.
I heard what he was going to do is Joe Biden's going to run in 2024. Next thing you know, they're going to flip flop. Joe's going to fall down the stairs. He's going to step right in. He's going to bring his laptop in with secrets.
Yeah.
With all the Chinese secrets. Then China's going to take over the U.S.
That sounds right. That sounds exactly right, because we know that the Ukraine and China bought and paid for this presidency. Right. The other big thing that I'm going to end things on as far as current events is, and I hate to say we told you so, and we hate to say that old David Cronenberg was ahead of his time once again, and this time this news came from his son. See ANTIVIRAL 2011, that's a deep cut. But lab-grown meat is cleared for sale by the FDA in the United States. Now, this is crazy. And this is being developed by plant-based egg substitute makers Eat Just also. So you got to understand that these people have got like multiple irons in the fire, and they're essentially like with meat alternatives and things like that. These companies are trying to get ahead of this so that they can basically market this as not real meat so you can eat it, right? And they think that they're going to capture that market from actual meat eaters, because there's a theory out there that, climate change and everything else that's going on, that, within generations, we're going to be talking about food shortages. They're not producing enough meat to feed the overpopulated planet Earth. So it's kind of fucked up.
So David Chang had something about this on, I think he did a show on either Hulu or Netflix, and he had tried a couple different things. I think it was fish first, because they tried sushi. And he said that it was actually weirdly good. But yeah, it's getting to the point to where I think it'll get at its height, and then whenever the machines take over, we'll end up on a train on a snowy cliff somewhere when the earth is frozen over, and we'll be eating cockroaches that are in these gelatin cubes.
Right.
That are said to be meat.
Right.
So we'll end up at Snowpiercer.
A bullet train that's running constantly. Yeah, with a hierarchy of carts. Sounds about right. So, folks, that's going to be all the current events talk that we have for you this week. Please stick around after the break. We've got Ann Wood coming up to feature her talent. Very special guest with us, and that is Ann Wood. Ann, how are you doing today, ma'am?
Doing great. Thank you much.
Thank you very much for joining the show, Ann. And Ann, how I like to start these conversations off with all of our guests and our listeners have come to know and love is kind of how we've come across your work. And specifically, we got lucky enough that Brandon actually met your husband and he told Brandon about your artwork and gave him website information, all that stuff. So we kind of did some deep dives on there, and we're huge fans of everything that we saw exhibition-wise that you're doing. And it's not only the medium of art that it is, but color palettes. I mean, we're going to get into all that today that you use in your work, some of the themes in your work. But man, it just really, I haven't had that first impression with an artist in quite some time, I would say. How about you, Brandon?
Well, we were a little bit put off by the bestiality exhibit that you had in there. It was a little bit off color, but most of the stuff, thankfully the bestiality was covered in paint.
So, it was tasteful, though. It was tasteful.
And it may actually, he's reporting from Missouri, so it may actually have touched some people.
It's legal here, so yeah, I can't say too much.
Yeah, well, I'm from there, so I may be into it too. No, but I love it. Anything that shows, in my mind, whenever I look at your work, anytime that I look at something that shows a bit of violence with a bit of beauty in it, to me, that's
life, right?
Yeah, that's
life.
Gorgeous to me. I love it.
100%. Thank you.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I just kind of wanted to kind of pick your brain to start things off as well. Kind of, when did you start gravitating towards arts? And I know that probably sounds like a funny question to some people, but I know for me, I did some artwork myself in school and had some opportunities, was recognized. And I know like there's some certain artists in my mind that I kind of gravitated towards, and I thought, okay, I'm going to try this. Were there moments like that for you in your childhood or intermediary school or anything like that where you saw art, any particular form of art or an artist specifically, and you thought, man, I really would like to try my hand at that?
Any particular instance where you saw animals and people having sex with them? Any dark period in your life?
Well, I think I came to it a little bit differently than a lot of people that become artists in that. Well, my mom was an artist. She was a watercolor painter, and she was really a great one. But sometimes when you say watercolor, people think of like these dainty kind of like, seascapes, but she didn't do that at all. They were very bold, and she probably should have been using a different medium. But, I think that she didn't really get to fully kind of do what she wanted. But, that way. But I would like wake up in the middle of the night and she'd be in her studio, which was next door, and she'd be painting, and I'd go in and see what she was doing on the way to, go pee and go back to bed. And so I always kind of compared myself to her. And honestly, like I took some classes in high school and stuff, but I was like a closeted artist. I'd like do it. And cause I didn't want anyone to see it because it could never be as good as what she made. And then I went to college and I thought I was going to be a writer because I was trying to be creative, and I realized it was too fucking hard. And so I took a painting class, and I was like, oh man, like this is actually kind of easy for me. And easy is the wrong word. It's a lot of work, but sometimes things just come naturally to you and you enjoy them.
Sure.
And so I did that. But another kind of odd thing is that I grew up in these little kind of, they're not like rural towns, but small towns. I don't think I ever went to an art museum until I took a field trip in college, and we went to San Francisco, and I, saw like real art that wasn't in a textbook. So, I don't know. That's kind of my like real brief background of coming to art.
Yeah. That's kind of an interesting and unique path for sure. And I wanted to kind of lean into the watercolor mention because, always in these conversations, things kind of jar some thoughts. And it's funny that you said that, like they weren't, these dainty paintings that people kind of think of with watercolor. And that's certainly, early on before I became more and more aware of watercolor art specifically out there, that's where my mind would have went to initially whenever you made that comment. But, watercolor itself is a medium that's taken on an entirely different life nowadays as well. I've seen all kinds, but, like a lot of folks use watercolor maybe to create like a dreamy landscape or piece of work. And it usually translates pretty well for something like that in that ilk. But funny enough, my son's dentist is a watercolorist as well. And she does all of this artwork for herself and at her business. And it's designs like whales on the walls and all, like every room has a theme. It's crazy like how good of an artist she actually is too. And then she's also a dentist. You think like, how can a person be this good at two things? It's possible, right? But she actually made and published a book that she keeps in the waiting rooms at the dentist's office too for all these kids to read. And it's really incredible. And but yeah, man, just like there's so many forms of art out there that people can love and appreciate. And I say all that to say this, whenever you hear of a specific medium of art, you shouldn't just write it off immediately because of maybe perhaps prior experiences or whatever the case is, because there's always kind of subgenres, if you will, is kind of the terminology I like to use, which technically applies to art as well. But, when you think of bands, you can say a rock band, but that could be punk rock, that could be indie rock, and those two genres sound very different from each other, but they're still under that shell. Same thing applies to art.
100%. And I think like drawing especially gets that kind of downplay too, because everyone just automatically thinks of pencil, and like now people do drawings with tape on the wall and they're like amazing. So drawing is just like mark making. I think probably the point is that there aren't really a lot of boundaries in art anymore. Like, you said, you decided what you wanted to do and you stuck with that genre. And now it's like, what do I want to make and how can I make it?
Right. Absolutely. And I know that whatever, some of the early artworks that I had started to see, I didn't understand the history behind those mediums and the artists that came before them and the people that inspired those movements and things like that until I started taking things like art history classes.
Yeah.
Were those kind of eye-awakening moments for you too as you went and started to pursue this more academically?
100%. And I also teach art history 1 and 2 right now, like, and drawing and painting. But, so to answer your question and get into that a little bit, I hated art history 1. Art history 2 was kind of fun. So just to be clear for people who don't know what I'm talking about, like everyone has to take a survey, and you take like prehistory to like the 1600s, and then you take the 1600s to present time. And so then you get into like Picasso and like things that, normal people kind of find interesting. I shouldn't say that. Some people love the pyramids.
Normal people.
Definitely.
It's really boring, and it was like the hardest classes I've ever taken, just because God, I'm sounding so old, but back then when you took art history, like you had to memorize all the dates and you had to be able to say who the artist was and spell it right. And I'm a terrible, things and write it down.
Yeah.
Now I think it's gotten a lot more flexible with like interactive books and stuff like that. But anyway, to kind of answer your question, I was interested in that. I had to take it. And I took some other like art history classes that I found pretty interesting. I had to take a couple other things, but I just wanted to make stuff. But then after college, I did the like backpacking thing, and a friend of mine, we went to Europe just to see art because she was also an art major. So we weren't going there to drink and like, have sex and stuff.
Is that the first?
That was just a funny aside.
Right. Yeah, I was just doing it anyway. But,
experience killing a homeless person in Europe, or?
Oh my gosh, no.
I was just asking.
Not my first. Not my first.
Your husband told me that you killed several homeless people.
Oh no.
Just letting all the cats out of the bag. How dare you?
Yeah. Giving all my secrets away. I was saving that for later.
Yeah.
But it was kind of eye-opening. Like, it was too much, like, just too much thrown at me at once. But I think I sat on that experience for a long time. And then as I kind of matured as an artist, I really started to draw from it. And I think that's kind of what I do with most things. Like,
Sure.
I'll have pieces that I think I wanted to make for 20 years, and I finally realized how to make them. So those kind of things just kind of stewed in my head. And then definitely like the Rococo and the Baroque, like gaudy, like just over the top stuff definitely stuck with me. And I think that's also another thing I got from my mom, is that like our house was just like over the top, like layers on layers of like a little Versailles in Eureka, California. So, so I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah, definitely like art history really did kind of influence me. Now, if you are asking me for specific things, I'll draw a blank and be like, I don't know,
Sure.
but
Sure.
definitely
Eureka, California, correct me if I'm wrong, is that not an infamous People's Temple stomping grounds previously in the Jim Jones age?
I don't know.
Does that ring a bell? I believe it is, actually.
So the bands when I was in college, we're talking bands, right? Was like,
no, I'm talking Jim Jones, like Drink the Purple Kool-Aid.
I thought you were saying something else. I'm so sorry.
People's
I thought
Temple.
you said,
It's okay.
No.
He's an acolyte. It's no big deal, Barrett.
I'm sure they drink the Kool-Aid. I honestly thought you said something about Temple, like the band. But anyway, that's the marijuana capital of the world.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think Eureka. I think the reason that Jim Jones and his people decided to move out there, outside the fact that they were getting ran off from the East Coast, Midwest, Indiana, because of all the trouble that they were making, was that allegedly, I think he read like in a People's magazine in the 1950s that Eureka, California was like one of the safest places to be because he was concerned about an earthquake coming and ending the world. And so,
yeah, but that's an earthquake place,
right? It's near a fault line.
Yeah.
Of course. So no, I take it back. It wasn't an earthquake. It was nuclear concerns.
Okay.
Yeah, because of the coastal winds, actually. So that was the reason why. I'm sorry, I totally gaffed that one. But yeah, that's the reason he wanted to move there.
I thought you were talking about a band. So
hey, that's okay. But yeah, I'm pretty sure Eureka, California is the location that they came out to. So I thought that was just kind of funny, and wondered if you had any stories from other generations.
No, I just know that it's like, a marijuana place and
Yeah.
redwood trees. I mean, it's beautiful to grow up there.
Yeah.
I took it for granted. There was nothing to do but smoke pot, So
Right, I hear you.
Well, sounds awful.
And of
terrible.
course,
that sounds awful.
I often get the People's Temple mixed up with Temple of the Dog, which I think is my.
I was like, is he talking about Stone Temple Pilot? I was like,
No,
I don't
there's
like
that
band.
too. I love that band. That's one of my
You
all-time
should have let me
favorites.
just go on. I was going to talk about the bands that were hot in high school from there.
Oh, well, let's hear it. I like to hear that type of talk.
Is that why you got with your husband?
Yeah.
Just because of his last name, Temple?
Uh-huh. Yeah,
so
totally.
you're just thinking about your husband this entire
That's
time.
true.
We can get off your end if you want us to, okay?
He's at the casino right now.
Oh, I bet he is, yeah.
Hey, man. I don't mind a trip to the casino every once in a while. Nothing wrong with that. But yeah, Stone Temple Pilots, fantastic band as well. I could go on about them an entire podcast without question.
Well, I apologize for...
No, it's okay. No, it is okay.
So the podcast is now about temples.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's everything's temple themed now. And we're going to go on many different trajectories with that type of conversation.
Love
but
it.
Getting back to Anne specifically and Anne's work, and when you were in college, Anne, I guess that's kind of, I guess you would say the time that you kind of locked in and started pursuing art as a career, and that started to actualize for you. While you were in college, kind of what was the thought? You're like, I'm going to be an artist. I'm going to be an exhibitionist, or I'm going to turn this into teaching. I mean, I know teaching's kind of an aside that kind of comes with the territory.
I mean, it's a really good question because, I teach young artists, and they're like, "Well, how am I going to make money?" And I'm like, "Oh, you poor thing, you're never going to make money. It's okay. Like, you'll figure it out." I know that's
the artist struggle.
Pollyannish. It's not true.
No.
You do have to have an income. But I thought I really wanted to teach at a university, and I realized that the reason that I wanted to do that was, to make money, but to continue being in school, kind of, or to explore.
Sure.
And then I went to graduate school, and I realized, sure, that could be a thing, but I kind of realized that you could do art and, other things. So,
Sure,
had the past gone right, I might be doing that. But now I'm really lucky that I get to go in the studio every day, or, during most of the classes that I teach now are online. What a wonderful time to be alive. But I do teach a couple studio classes, and I'm lucky I get to say, put him here and put him here. And I go in Monday and Wednesday afternoon, so it's really kind of nice to be able to do that and do it realistically. But you don't make money doing exhibition. People will think a lot of people think, oh, so you have this great exhibition at a really wonderful place, you must have made money. No, you spent a fuck ton of money to make the work, and you probably got a stipend, and that stipend was anywhere from $500 to, the biggest one I think I ever got was $10,000, and you're thinking, well, that's a lot of money. Sure, but you have to make the work. You have to drive it there. It costs $1,000 to drive a U-Haul, as I know now. And I'm not putting that on on other places.
people.
Right, yeah, but it's the nature of the work that people think that you make money if you have a show. It's not like that. Now you can sell work in a gallery, but then you have to make work that sells. So there's a conflict there. People like me, who's going to put a 7-foot Baroque fountain in their house? Nobody. Right. And so you have to kind of figure out where is my love and where's that balance of
I put it in my shower.
Okay, it would be great. It's a really good idea.
Just to speak on an intelligent conversation and not be the village idiot the entire time that I'm on this podcast. I'm very minor into. I was always into art whenever I was a kid. I recently just started painting miniatures and stuff like that. And people do commissions. I know what you're talking about because I can do a commission for somebody, right? And then I can try and figure out a price for that. But I spend I don't know, $150 to $200 a month in art supplies in general. And then to go on top of that and tell somebody what you're going to do in sometimes some of my stuff, it takes me 20 hours to make. So you're right. I mean, it sounds like a lot of money. It's really not at the end. I mean, because it's just, there's so much work and so much time put into that, and time is money.
And it's hard to quantify the time that you put into things sometimes. Like I know even when Brandon started early on with like some of his dioramas, which is, I would say, kind of similar to some of the artwork that you do, just on a smaller scale.
See these.
Yeah, some of his intricacies in his dioramas and stuff. We were spitballing ideas because he was asking me as he was getting his shop up, how much should I charge for this? I'm like, well, you got to take into account how much time you spent on it, and it was really hard for Brandon to quantify that. And I could relate to that as well because you go and you work on something when the time grants it, and it's easy as you're creating to kind of get lost in the process, and like people think it sounds weird, but it's hard for you to like realize how much time you spent working on something sometimes.
Yeah.
You kind of almost have to do when things like when the mood strikes you too.
Yeah. I talked over you, but like
That's
other thing is like, do you count the time when you're sitting in your studio just staring at it? Like trying to figure out what to do? Like I wasn't working, but I was there and I was thinking about it
But it is work. And that's, so I talk to my therapist mostly about the homeless people I killed, but you always have, I think any good person kind of downplays what the fuck they do, like constantly. Any good artist is going to be like, yeah, but it's not that big of a deal. And it's one of those things where you have to take your level of thinking and you have to go, what will other people think about that? And it has to be much higher in your mindset. Or mean, I don't know if you have any experience, that you can speak on that. Like as far as like downplaying your work or.
I mean, I struggle all the time to talk about, like, you don't want to go in and be like, I'm the best, right? Because then you're an asshole. But, and it's hard to talk to people who don't understand. Like, this is a great conversation. But, sometimes people are like, so, like, they just don't get it,
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm not answering the question great, but I struggle with that all the time. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say that you're the best at everything.
And I'm the best. I don't want to say that I'm the best, but I'm the struggle.
Like, I think that's kind of a part of the artistic plight in general, though. I don't care what your practice is, whether it's creating dioramas in Brandon's case or painting miniatures or in your case, and doing exhibitions and just these incredible displays and pieces of artwork that you're doing. And me writing a song or whatever the case is that you're always going to see the imperfections in your work. You're always going to hear the imperfections in your work. And other people, 99% of the time, don't even if they're of your trade, catch the things that you are zeroing in on. And anybody you could pick anything that you do to death. Sometimes, I will say my resolution to these things is you just got to step away from it.
Yeah.
Or get a second opinion that you value, but not don't taint the water before you hand it off either.
100%.
Just say, hey, I want your thoughts on this, just put it in somebody else's hands.
100%. And I think like with the way that I work too, it's very detailed, and I seriously am not done until the person who runs the gallery like pushes me out the door and locks it. Cause there's always like one more push pin I could do or one more thing. And I'm crazy. Like sometimes I'll like have assistants help me or my kids, and, I'll look at it and I'll be like, oh, I can see where, my daughter pushed the pins. I mean, she did a great job doing that, but I can see it and I'll be like, and it's fine. I've learned to let it go, but nobody else would ever see that those pins are too patterny or something. So,
sure.
I get it on a small scale because you're much higher level than I am.
Not at all. Everyone is.
I understand
creative.
That. That's cute. That's very, very cute.
Shut up.
But what I'm saying is like, there's times where I've looked at small things that I've done. Like I did a really good piece and I was like, man, I'm so proud of that. And then I tried a different genre and went into sci-fi. And then I look at it and I go, I'm not fucking putting that shit on my page. I would rather eat shit and die before I would fucking have to do something like that. So I get it. Because even to your kid point, even whenever my wife has mentioned, I've asked her opinion, and she's giving it to me, I feel like an asshole because I'm like, she doesn't know what I know my vision for this, and it's
right.
And, and it's not to be a fucking asshole to her. It's just in my head, I'm like, I'm not seeing it that way. I just don't. So I get I can see where they put the push pins in there.
Right.
Yeah,
I totally get that.
Right there. Well, on the other hand, I don't know what's better. Like my husband, Jeff Temple, doesn't like. I don't know. Like sometimes he listens to me. He's really great, but I'm so like, I will never finish this. It's gonna suck, and he'll just be like, "Shut up, it's gonna be fine." Like so. I don't know. Like, I guess I whine a lot maybe when I'm in the thick of things. But
well, I mean, that's again, it's back to that artistic plight, and I think like if you're not growing, if you think that you can't grow, then you've got an issue. I don't care who you are. There's always something that we can all learn, and I think you actually grow with each piece that you do
100%.
or artistic output. Equate whatever you want to put here, writing a song, or crafting oil painting on a canvas or whatever the case is, or making a diorama. You always learn as you're doing stuff. I mean, even as people don't think about this piece when it goes into even doing a podcast and the production
100%.
piece of it. Like I learned as I got back into doing this sort of thing again. And you really like the best teacher sometimes is just getting your hands on in there and getting your arms dirty and going elbow deep in whatever that task is, without question.
Yeah,
100%.
Any mention of buttholes in this, or did that come up, or is
I was waiting for it. I served that one right up.
And you said nothing was off limits, so
Brandon's trying to push the limits here.
I know exactly what you're getting at, because I will tell you that was a beautiful day in my life when I realized I was going to embroider a butthole. And so I remember it. I was sitting there and I was like, oh my God, I can embroider that butthole. And I was real excited, and it worked. It worked both times.
That's freaking great. Hey, so we've changed it now from temple talk to butthole talk.
Yeah.
Okay,
this is the butthole hour with a couple of assholes.
Bring it.
Now, whenever you got into school, I have to ask too, as far as, I mean, art shows and art show circuits and all of that is its own thing for anybody that's kind of familiar with art. I try to present these conversations in the event that maybe this is the first time people are hearing these sort of things. So
I don't think people know how it works.
Yes, for sure. So talk about kind of how that works for, let's say, a college-age student versus, somebody in a career post-education as well.
For sure. So, like when you're in school, like when you're in college, you apply to like all of the shows that they have on campus, and you try to kind of build your portfolio. It is really hard because then you're kind of thrown to the wolves, and you're like, well, now what? And so you apply to every single juried show, and hopefully you have really good mentors who tell you which ones are worth a shit and which ones you shouldn't be involved in. And you can kind of tell. And sometimes you'll get in a show and you'll go and you're like, oh, like I kind of like was like, didn't do quite as well as I should have. Like I should have like aimed higher or lower, but usually that doesn't happen, right? So you do that. And then, I mean, hopefully people see your work, and it's all just about getting out there. And if it's good and you kind of network, then people ask you to be in things, and you just keep applying, and you get rejected a lot, and it's okay. I get rejected way more than I ever get accepted to anything. Right. So you just keep trying, and hopefully, again, it comes down to like everything, having good mentorship and people who shoot you straight and, kind of tell you where you should be, and you go from there, and you, like you said, get better each time. So, I mean, I kind of did that circuit, and then got out of graduate school and was kind of like flailing a little bit, and I ended up being in the show at the Dallas Center for Contemporary Art. It's changed its name, and that was kind of a big kickstart. And it just happened that the curator there saw my work, and we talked, and she liked me, and she gave me this opportunity to make this, what I thought at the time was this huge installation, and now it's like not as big as some of the things I make. But I mean, it just takes people to believe in you, and you to believe in yourself, and to just get out there and try and put yourself out there, and it's hard to do.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned something too that I didn't mean to gloss over earlier is
that's okay.
mentors specifically in your life, and I'm sure that was a very key part in your development and your pursuit. Is there any mentors? I mean, outside of your mother, you mentioned her, maybe more on the inspiration side of things, but are there any mentors out there that you would say really contributed to you pursuing things?
Well, in college, I had a painting professor, James Kuiper, and he has since passed. And I loved that man. Oh, we see kids. Mine are so much older than that. Oh,
that's my youngest. He's almost 3. Sorry.
My youngest is 18. He's probably drunk in the pool right now. I don't know.
That's good.
I'm not there. I'm not there, to be clear. I'm out of town.
She gave him the wine bottles. Yeah.
So I would not allow that. But I'm just saying.
Yeah, you would never allow that. It's no big deal.
No, you're 18. You gotta at least be in college. Anyway, the point is that James Kuiper, I really loved that man because he was the first person who really pushed me to do things like bigger and better. And I was making these kind of florally paintings that look a lot like what my mom used to make. And I remember he came up to me and he said, "If you paint that same painting again, I'm going to give you an F." And he was full of shit. I was there he wasn't going to, but I think that he just had to say that to me because that was what drove me, is that I'm a nerdy straight A student. And so I tried something different and it sucked, but it got me thinking about doing something different. And then I took a summer course with him, and he actually kind of turned me into a sculptor. He, which is a funny thing to say because I just said how we're all, I don't know if I'm a sculptor, but I'm an artist, but someone who makes sculpture, because he built this, and it's really, actually, I'm having an epiphany. It's informative. He brought in this wooden dog, and he said that he had built in his studio the night before, and he sat it in front of me and he said, "Paint this." And I was like, okay. So I did my textural painting that I'd been doing on this really thick watercolor paper, and did it on this dog shape, and it was amazing. And I remember it was kind of cool because it was so good that they put it in the office for the the art department. I felt real cool. But I'm just now realizing that that's kind of what I do now. So great.
I know.
But that was a real mentoring moment. Is he was just a really good person for me, and he's the reason I'm in Texas, or I went to Texas too, is because I asked him, where should I go to graduate school? And he had been in San Antonio teaching before, and he said, well, you'd like San Antonio. So I applied there, and I got in, and I liked it. So I really give him a lot of credit. And I also had a teacher in graduate school. I had a couple, but Ken Little, who's an amazing sculptor, and he actually does animal work too. So I guess maybe I'm just doing what everyone else did before me. But
manifestation of your inspirations, right?
But
that's a key of inspiration. Is truly, we can sit here and say that it's not stealing, but it's taking off of other people that have truly blown you away. And just to make sure that we line it in the sand, you had this epiphany because of the ATI podcast.
Exactly.
Right.
You had that epiphany. So the ATI podcast made you fully understand and get through a part in your life that was pivotal.
Yeah. On one hand, I realized where I came from, and on the other hand, I realized I'm still doing the same shit. So
take that for what it's worth.
Take that as a promotion.
That's the biggest tagline for this show.
I'm doing the same shit.
And that is true. I look back at things I made in undergrad, and I'm making it a lot better and different. But I just kind of make the same things over and over in different iterations, which is okay. I mean, that's what people do. But anyway,
to be honest with you, though, that's kind of. I mean, again, I can relate this to music. I can relate it to other artists. There's a voice there that you see. I went and saw the Monet exhibit up at the St. Louis Art Museum. When you see a Monet, you know it's a Monet. When somebody's doing a copy of a Monet, you know it's a copy of Monet. So while it's real close, it's not the original. So I think that your artistic lens, your artistic voice, especially if it's consistent, you're always going to be somewhere in that wheelhouse.
100%.
Yeah.
And whenever you started doing art shows in college, were they kind of early iterations of what you do now, or was it just entirely different stuff? Was it just whatever was a part of the curriculum at the time, and you just made that piece of art to fit that?
Well, it was, by the time I got to that point, I was in more of, as was everyone, kind of in the upper level classes, and they expect you to do your own thing in a series. So I was kind of doing my own thing. I was making, like I said, I was afraid. I took sculpture and I did a pretty good job, but I thought I was a 2D artist, and I was making these big paintings, like I said, that were very much like my mom, but I had worked in some gold spray paint, and I never wore a respirator or anything. So anyway, and I was spray painting stuff like this gold to kind of be like a Byzantine, floral arrangement kind of thing. Yeah. And they were kind of fun. And then you had a BFA exhibition where you got a certain gallery for 3 weeks, and you got to do whatever you wanted. And I'd made all of these little objects that hung on the wall because they had to be wall based, so I'd still be a painter because I was really kind of into who I was as an artist. And so I made a whole bunch of stuff, and I was taking caulking and adding paint to make it really thick because I wanted it to look like impasto, but I didn't want to spend $7 million on paint. Right. So that was one of the ways that I was kind of doing that. And it was okay. But I can't remember who said this, but one of my friends who was a dude and had worked in construction was like, let's just build a smaller room inside the gallery. And I was like, fuck yeah, let's do that. And so we built inside a small gallery another smaller room, so you had to walk around it and kind of come in through the back, and then all those little things were in there, so it was almost like a little chapel. And that was the first time that I was like, if I want to do it, I can figure out how to do it. And so that was kind of amazing. I have people, and I can hire people, I can ask people, and we can do things together. And I don't know. So I forgot what the question was. I got real excited. No. But that was super fun.
Collaboration and just the idea of having an experience. I mean, a smaller studio within a studio is got to be a pretty cool situation really to walk into.
Yeah. And the fact you kind of backward engineer, I always am fascinated whenever people kind of backward engineer and fix their problems and their conundrums. Whereas
I do everything backwards.
But it was very out of the box as well with this example in particular, and that was the fact that you guys built a small room inside of another room. So very fascinating way to approach it for sure. I was going to also ask you, obviously you implement, and you've already detailed several different types of mediums or uses of materials in the artwork that you actually make. And I would consider at the very least, I don't know what you would call yourself even, but multi-medium artist, if you will. You use the 2D paintings, you do 3D sculpturing. There's just so much. Embroidered buttholes. Yeah, definitely is a highlight. We have to. That should be on the business card for sure.
It should. It actually is.
People don't realize, but it's an embroidered butthole on the business card.
There's more context, but I'm not sure that was right.
No, very nice little Easter egg.
No, it's just, and those two fingers that you were just doing right there.
But I'm just wondering, how was this always the idea, or you just, this is me and this is who I'm going to be forever? I mean, was this methodically mapped out?
No, I think I went through kind of a crisis in graduate school, like probably everybody does, in that I had a studio and I was trying to make stuff, and it was all sucking because, I just got done with college, and you get to the top and you're like, I'm on top of the world and I'm such a good artist, right? And then you go and there's a lot of other good artists and you're trying to do stuff, and it was hard. And I was making these I was taking these objects, kind of like I talked about the dog, and painting them like cuckoo clocks and stuff, and it wasn't very good. And I think I had been trying to. This is going okay. Anyway, I was trying to make this thing out of polyurethane because I figured out that if you could pour half an inch of polyurethane into a cookie sheet and let it sit overnight, you could peel it out and you could use it like a skin, and you could sew it, and it was very flexible. The problem is that in about 3 weeks, it would be like so brittle that if you touched it, it would just like turn to dust. And so I was making these things, and one of my professors came in, and she was like, "Why don't you just use rubber?" And I was like, "Huh? Like, what do you mean?" And she's like, "Look at this site, get something and try it." And so I started using this rubber, and it's a 1-to-1 mix, and you poured it, and it dripped, and it started this whole new like world of materials, and that I could use these certain kind of like polyurethane, like plastics, and they all had different pot lives and different amounts of time that they would like cure. So like most of the stuff you see on the website is this like stuff called Flex Foam at 10, and you mix it up, and you have maybe, depending on the heat, 60 seconds. And so I mix it up, and I run, and I pour it, and it dries in these like awesome drips. You don't have much control, but so anyway, like the materials and stuff were really kind of spurred on by the fact that I just was sucking, and my professor was like, "Have you heard of rubber?" And I was like, "Huh?" But it was pretty cool.
I guess that's how you kind of get some of the like candle wax melting sensations in some of your work.
Exactly it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It's the best stuff. I love it. But
I do love that portion of it. I think that that's one of the things. A lot of people look at that and think that it's meticulously made, but whenever it dries like a certain way, and you can see within like imperfections that it's made something into something entirely different. Because if anybody else was to pour that, it would be different than you pouring that right there and it curing instantly. So I think there's kind of beauty in that, in the sense that you used a delicate hand to do so, and then let it dry, and it dries in a different pattern from what anybody else could.
Sure.
Well, I totally agree with that. Like, even though it has its way of working, like I definitely have a hand, like I know exactly how to do it. Like I could have somebody else do it, and I'd be like, that doesn't look right. You know, it's stupid, but like, that's not how you're supposed to do it. So it's just, there is a touch and a way that you work with stuff. So I agree with that.
It's like a signature, you know, you're going to have your own stylistically signature versus the way mine might look. And same thing applies to the artwork for sure. Another thing that I kind of wanted to get into with you, Ann, was some of your exhibits specifically. Before we get there, I want to talk to you about kind of just the creative process for you and where you may draw inspiration kind of outside of the box. And that is, you know, do you find yourself influenced by movies, any other particular artworks or mediums, music? Is there anything that when it's time to create, these are kind of rituals that you engage in?
Is it something like in your head where you're like, man, I really want to see a bunch of dead animals that I could paint beautifully? And do I want to like massacre a bunch of animals? And also, do I want to kill an animal right now? Do I want to road and drink its blood? Do I want to?
I mean, in addition to all that and buttholes, I mean, first of all, like I am inspired. I don't even know when. Like I'll see something and I'm like, oh shit! Like I know what I'm going to do, and I'll tell Jeff, and he'll be like, okay, yay! Like I'm especially inspired by like architecture, just everyday weird things. Like, for example, on my website, you probably saw I made this like big like working fountain that had like these animals. And I was in Mexico City, my favorite place on earth, and I was walking through the park and I saw a fountain. I was like, why haven't I made a fountain? Like, duh. Like obviously you're gonna make a fountain. That was before Kara Walker did it, who I love, but I just wanted to put that out there. Hers is a lot better. A lot better.
Take that, Kara.
Yeah.
I love her too, and she is such a bitch. Man.
I love her work, but that fountain, I'm like, anyway, so things like that really inspire me. Like the chandeliers that I made were kind of a combination of like living in Galveston, we have a Mardi Gras, and so was kind of inspired by all their tinsel-y stuff.
Yeah.
But also I had gone to Versailles, which is like the worst place on earth. I mean, I love it, but it's so like I wanted to die. I was like, I got to get out of here. It's like too claustrophobic. But I just, things like that, like just like stick in my head. And like right now, I haven't started it, but it's been in my head. I have the sketch. Like I'm gonna make like a spiral staircase out of doll hair, like stuff like that. Like I know what I'm gonna make, and I know when I see it. Music, not so much like the sound, but lyrics. Like I thought I was gonna be a poet, and so sometimes I don't like sit around reading poetry or anything, but every now and then I'll like read something and I'll be like, oh, I love that phrase, and like it sticks with me a little bit. Like so, just kind of weird things like that.
Sure.
But even tonight,
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like, even the paintings, I see them more as like objects of history, kind of like the buttholes, the dead animals are all like this homage to, like Spanish and Dutch still lives, where they would show these dead animals with like all the oysters and the fruit to kind of show like fertility and like that you're going to die.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with those. I love them. Like when I go to a museum, I head straight there to see what kind of dead animals I can see. And it's weird. I know. I did grow up like my dad hunted a lot and stuff. Not a lot, but enough. And was a farmer, rancher. But so I think all those things kind of inspire me. Like, but it's even the paintings, like I was saying, are more like historical objects. Like I want them to look like they came out of like Versailles or something.
And it's doll hair, right? That you're thinking about, not
human hair, not homeless people's hair,
not baby hair.
Okay. Not baby hair. Yeah, it's doll hair for sure.
Well, I did make a deer blind out of doll hair, and so I'm just gonna make it again, but in a different shape.
Sure.
Cool.
That sounds very cool.
Yeah.
Down for it.
And in some of your artwork as well, I noticed too. Now this is me again. I'm just speculation.
No, of course.
Let me back it up to this. These are my first impressions, and that is, whenever I'm looking at other people's artwork, I always like try to relate it to something else that I like. You know, if I gravitate towards something, or sometimes I see something and I innately like it, but I can't exactly put my finger on it. Well, so with some of your first pieces that I saw as well, like I got some like Midsummer vibes from. There's a movie that came out recently, Annihilation, as well.
Yeah.
That I was just kind of like the dead animal aspect of things, but you know, like some animals had died off in a particular scene, and just like this most beautiful foliage was like coming out of them and stuff, like just like kind of those sorts of themes are automatically what I thought of in both movies that I love tremendously. But in my research of you too, I should say that I came across that you did a podcast, I want to say in the last few years, where you talked about Marie Antoinette. And I was like, you know, some of the color palettes and some of this stuff, I can kind of see Sofia Coppola's Marie Antoinette in this too. So like, I just see a lot of inspirations in the work in and of itself.
Yeah, I agree with that. And usually with movies, I see it kind of after or during. Like, I don't look at it and go, oh, I'm going to make that. But then I'll be in the process and I'll watch something and I'll be like, oh, like what? I feel dumb right now because the movie Hereditary.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I was making something in all those little houses and I was like, oh, I can use light. And then I was like, oh, and now my whole like mind is blown and my whole world has changed because like everything has to have light or something that works. Like just a little thing like that can just like flip it to where, oh, I'm going to do that.
Touching our heart and soul right now because that's movies that we adore. That's things that we just,
Yeah. Ari Aster doesn't make a bad film. Midsummer, Hereditary, he's on a good run. Beau Was Afraid, if anybody's seen that. That's another good one.
I mean, which one?
Beau Was Afraid.
That's his new
film. I haven't seen that.
Just had a limited release. I think, was it April 1st,
oh, my son saw it, and he told me I needed to see it, but I haven't yet.
And it just came out on VOD this week, so it is accessible to folks. I recommend them checking it out.
It's anxiety-driven. It's a lot of chaos and a lot of...
I like that.
If you've ever seen Darren Aronofsky's Mother, I would equate the panic that you get from that movie with this one, but in a weird black comedy way.
It's funny.
Okay, I'll like that. Yeah. That Mother movie, like, I don't like to think about that movie.
Yeah. Well, at first, whenever I watched it, this was my sensation with it. I was getting so pissed off, like, first 15, 20 minutes. I'm like, why is this woman so stupid? Why is she so stupid? And I wasn't getting like the homages and the references. And I got like halfway through it and I'm like, it clicked for me, which was probably too far because I should have made the correlation sooner than that because of what the characters' names were. And then I grew up in an extremely religious cult-like household until I was like 18. So I should have gotten everything right away. And I, for whatever reason, was like, woo! I was not expecting it to be to draw the correlations that it did. And I don't want to ruin it for people until they see it. But yeah, man, Mother was a sneaky good movie. And I think a lot of people didn't like it because of those same reasons it didn't click with them, or maybe they didn't have the life experiences that I did. And I was like, oh, okay, this is saying something.
They didn't like the
standing on the shoulders. Yeah, that one was well received either.
Kind of a mood killer sometimes.
But hey, I mean, it's a thing that happens in life too, as morbid as it may or may not be. But to actually see that actualized on screen makes people think about it further, and it's thought provoking, whether that's a good or bad thing. And people don't like to face those feelings.
Yeah.
And to me, the mark of good art, good cinema, is something that makes you feel something. And I'll draw this back into you. And that's immediately when I saw your work, it just stood out to me. Again, some of the best artwork that I'd seen, at least first impression wise, in some amount of time. And I'm really looking forward to perhaps the opportunity to see it in person. I know that the intricacies of your work aren't actualized or realized until, people have the chance to actually see your stuff in person.
I agree with that. I think in person is the way to go, but your work is also only as good as the photograph of it. So especially mine, because it all just goes into storage and gets trashed. So I want to say something. I laughed really hard when you said that because I always say that to my family. I'm like, good art, or good art, you just think about it all the time. And then we watched the worst fucking movie ever, like on Christmas, and got in a big fight about it. It was the American Underdog. You know what it is? Like the Kurt Warner story. It's like a religious movie. I didn't know that. Yes. It was so bad. So we got in this fight like we always do. Like my daughter and my husband kept saying, that's the best movie. I mean, they were just full of shit, but they were trying to make us mad. We're like, it's the worst movie. Anyway, I can't stop thinking about it because it's so bad. And so I said that, and they're like, well, then what about the best art? And I'm like...
And what's funny... What's funny that you said that. I don't know if you know this, but it's based out of...
St. Louis at the time.
Based out of St. Louis type area. And that's where I'm from. So it's, I saw that preview and I was
we grew up in that shit.
Oh my God. It was Christmas and it was a football movie and I'm like, I'm going to take it for the team. And it was so bad. And it was like, anyway, we don't need to talk about it, but it was like, when you said that, I just started cracking up because it reminded me of me being all like on my high horse. If you think about it, then it's art. Like, even if you don't like it. And then here I am like, no, that was shit.
Her next is going to be Kurt Warner's head on a pike.
Right? I'd love
that. Would be fantastic, and I would drive hundreds of miles to see that personally.
Yeah.
But
anyway, sorry, it was
no, it is. No, that is hilarious, actually. I want to say that kind of the first parts of your artworks, to get more specific, though, that I was kind of getting some like those Midsummer vibes from specifically was pieces like My Mother's Deathbed and Nest. Just kind of like the floral arrangements, the color palettes. Again, if you've seen the movie and the headdress and that sort of stuff, it's, pretty on par with that. Mm-hmm. Even the shroud, that's just beautiful flower arrangements of varying types. And it's really cool, like the textures that you were getting just from the different species of flowers, even that you were using as well. Like, was that something that you knew that you were going to accomplish by doing that? Was that something you thought of or something you discovered as you went along the way? Like, I'm just curious how these thoughts come to you and how you implement them.
Well, the flowery thing, I think, is, my mom, besides like being an artist, she was a florist, and her and my grandma grew flowers in Humboldt County, which is great for growing stuff, marijuana, but also flowers. So they grew flowers for the San Francisco flower market, and they would go down there and they would do their farming stuff, and they would drive all the way to San Francisco, which was like a 5-hour drive, and sell them for people to wholesale. But I would go to school and I would come home and there'd be another huge like floral arrangement on the table. The house would smell like tuberose or whatever. And then the next day I'd come home and it'd be a different flower so if you couldn't sell them, you keep them, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of grew up and my house always smelled like a florist shop. There was flowers everywhere. And my mom just had like the greenest thumb in the world. Like she had a degree in like ornamental horticulture, and so she was like,
Oh, wow.
I mean, she has never killed a house plant. I can't do that. Like that's why I do like them. I want to just have them fake because I can like not have to water them. I don't know. So that was a big influence. I don't know if I knew I was doing it, but going back to when I was making those things out of polyurethane that were crumbling, I grew up in California and I moved here and I was like making these little like rosebuds that looked like nipples and putting them on there. But then I wanted more and some guy came in and said, go to Hobby Lobby. And I was like, what's Hobby Lobby? He's like, it's right over there. And I went to Hobby Lobby, which I hate their politics, but like I love their flowers. And so I walked in and I was like, oh, like all these flowers, they're fake, but they are like perfect. And so that kind of sparked that. And it just went from there. It started with like, I remember I bought 5 flowers because they were like $5 each. And that was a lot of money. And I put them on there. And now I'm like buying 500 flowers and, Anyway, so I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it's got to be, well, I mean, I already know, me living in Texas as well, that Hobby Lobby is very prevalent about their politics.
Missouri,
but I find myself that I have to go there all the freaking time too. So I mean,
like Walmart. They always have what you need, and you're like,
they're kind of a monopoly, and they're not as expensive as Michael's. And
and Michael's doesn't have the same flowers.
No, they don't. The bastards. Michael's an asshole.
We have Joanne's here also as another person.
They don't have the same flowers. I go to all of them.
It's all fair, yeah. It's all those corporate greedy bastards.
Yeah.
So, Anne, in some of your other artwork too, I wanted to mention in the Violent Delights collection. I noticed too. This is just the example that I wanted to use that I kind of foreshadowed or mentioned earlier is the fact that you have your sculptures like in the foreground, but in the background there's a more traditional canvas painting or painting of some sort. And so if people are perusing your website, these are some of the examples that I'm speaking to specifically, and that's got to be really challenging. I mean, obviously thematically they're kind of tied together, but I mean, it's got to be kind of challenging to switch hats like that, even within the same, I guess, what you're trying to accomplish aesthetically with an art piece.
Well, that specific show, I really challenged myself because I haven't really got into my crises of like wanting to be a painter and wanting to make things that you just walk in and throw on the wall and like being an installation, like kind of sculptor who has to go and stay for a week and a half and sweat for 15 hours a day. Like I set myself up for that challenge. I was like, I got the show and it's kind of a women in their work in Austin. And it's kind of a coveted show, right? They give like 10 a year, maybe, 6, maybe less. And I wanted to make traditional painting. So I really tried to limit my palette and to be very like tight with it. But then I think I kind of let myself be loose on the sculpture, knowing that it was going to kind of all come together. So those 4 paintings that are in that, I think there's 4 in that kind of series, were really important to me. I hadn't made a painting in like 10 years. I hadn't done anything 2-dimensional. And I just said, I'm going to do it. And I made myself do it. And of course, now if you look at subsequent shows, the paintings now pour off onto the floor and like I've lost control, and that's okay. But I really tried very hard to make those paintings, and I am calling them paintings because they are very traditional, just like tight and on the wall.
Yeah,
there was no spillage. I mean, I used stickers and I poured plastic. I didn't use paint. I didn't have a paintbrush, but they are on the wall. So therefore they are paintings.
That's still like, you made a comment in passing too earlier. Like I would think the more challenging part of this would not be the more 2-dimensional paintings, although, you're adding an element of 3D with some of the textures and stuff that in the materials that you're using with the paintings on the walls still yet. But nonetheless, I would think it'd be more challenging to kind of do the installation type ends of the artwork that you're doing. But it sounds like that's the part that comes a little bit more natural to you versus the keeping things on the wall, as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I see the paintings kind of as these historical objects that kind of turn into modern like things, and now they spill off and they actually become more like the sculptures, if that makes sense. Like they kind of actually spill off the wall. But yeah, like obsessive, like excess comes very natural to me. Like I said, people have to kick me out to make me stop. So yeah, I mean, you're right. Like that part is easier for me, I think, than trying to be like real contained. Like I also tried to just make a drawing. Like here's a Sharpie and here's a piece of paper, which I love. Like by the time I'm done, I've like sewed on it, ripped it. Like I'm not good at that tight, like
kind of staying within between the lanes.
Yeah. So I mean, I'd like to.
So you've been forced out. Has anything of violence happened to you recently?
No.
Forced you out on the street.
You have to discuss.
That's the thing. I don't have any like. I don't. Well,
not like call the police. I mean, they may hurt you too.
I know you're being sarcastic, but it's weird. Like, also, like I've lived like this basic white girl like existence. You know, like I don't have anything like that. Like the only I will say so. This is kind of a downer, but obviously we talked about my mother's deathbed and stuff. In 2016, both of my parents died, and I'm an only child, and it was like within 6 weeks of each other.
Oh my!
And so it was like I had this like thing where I thought about death in this way that you look at paintings of dead animals,
right?
And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, like shit, it can be real, and that kind of changed things a little bit. I've kind of gotten out of it. Like there was a period where that's all I thought about. Like not death and not my parents even, like, you know, but just more
the
like
finality of it all.
Yeah. And like when I made like my mother's deathbed, like I made sure that it was the size of a coffin, and like, you know, I did research on that. And then my dad's deathbed was a lounge chair, because unfortunately like the last not a lounge chair, not the beach kind. What am I, like a recliner, right?
Yeah.
Because like the last week, like the last months of his life, he just kind of sat in the recliner. And so I don't know, like that's like the biggest, I mean, knock on wood, I'm sure, but that's like the biggest like trauma that I've really had so far.
No, and I understand that. This is a serious point that I can actually not make any sarcastic jokes. I was going through a time, my dad killed himself. And I was going through a time that I had made this shop. I was starting to paint, and it was such a long name. And it's based off of my dad's name backwards. It's a character based upon that I made in Dungeons and Dragons. As silly as that may be. But after my dad died, I made this character. I made this shop right after. It was Edaw's Imperious Emporium. But I was talking to Barrett about changing the name of it, and I came up with Edaw's End. And it's really the way I took it whenever I thought of it was my dad passing, and there's a troubled history behind that. But I understand the trauma aspect of it, because, you know, there's these things that really impact our lives that, and this may sound so cliche and so bullshit, but there's this thing about trauma that really can either, certain people will break them down and then make them look at life a little bit darker.
Yeah. I've
always looked at life dark as fuck. I've done that since I was like 14, 15, and that's why we're best friends, me and Barrett. And the reason why I connected with your husband so well, quite honestly.
It's usually the dark humor that hooks us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that for me now, I'm finally comfortable in my own skin, and I know it's that I'm in the early stage of artistry, whereas you're blossoming and doing your. So
are you calling me old?
No, girl, you're
I'm just kidding.
You're not old. Not that much old enough.
You're mature.
Jeff actually thought that I was a youngin', like that I was in my 20s.
Yeah,
I'm pushing 40. So
I'm just kidding.
No, I know, but
we're all young. Okay.
Yeah, we're all fucking young. Yeah, so I understand that. I think that it's one thing to do art, and another thing to actually express what you want.
For sure.
to either your organization, your company, or yourself, and another like to like just feel it out. And I think that a lot of people do art because they're really good at it, and I think others do art and they actually have a meaning behind it.
Yeah, you're talking about lacking essence, and whenever you actually put some people look at it as a soul or an essence into something, I think it projects outwardly even more so, and gravitates and captures people. And to do things soullessly, like don't get me wrong, I've seen plenty of soulless pieces out there they're nice, and did they color between the lines? Yes, and did they accomplish what the goal or the task at hand was? Yes, but it's those instances of going above and beyond. And I think you tie this back into you, and like I think that your work does go beyond the confines of some of people's traditional expectations, especially with mixing the various mediums and what have you. But you're implementing so many different influences and everything that we've detailed up to this point. I think you have something for everybody in your work.
Oh, that's sweet. I mean, I like to, like, it makes me happy when I'm at a show and somebody comes up and says, it reminds me of this. And I always get it. I'm like, oh, like, yeah. Or I didn't think of that, but you're right. So
yeah,
I think that it does speak to people because they're familiar things, but not quite right. Like, you know what they are, and they look like cake sometimes. And who doesn't like cake?
Sure.
I mean, I don't know. It's, yeah. But also,
now that you say that, that explains
I know.
why I ate a whole cake before we started this.
Well, it doesn't explain that. I mean, he smoked 2 blunts before he got on here. So.
That may have happened also.
But it goes back to like anyone can make a living at art if you just want to, like, I'm in New Orleans, like it's the blue dog thing. I'm like, dude, but like it's kind of cute, but like just like you want to feel it. But then can you like have it? Like people want to have it, they want to own it,
right.
and like put it on their wall and like it's like almost like a weird trope, and like maybe not because.
Yeah,
now Anne will be doing an exhibit explicitly with 12 dead dogs, and
they'll all be blue.
I've been thinking about dogs for a long time because they're in all those royal portraits, and I'm like, dude, I need to do some dogs. But it's hard. Okay, something about my work that I've noticed is it can become like kind of cute really fast. Like the scale is important.
Yeah.
If you know what I'm saying, like, and I don't mean cute. I mean cute, kind of in a bad way, like where it's like, oh, that's cute. Like that's not what I want. So,
sure. Yeah.
Like
you should do the dog card game, but do it your floral version,
I'd love
or
to
like
do that for sure.
Are they actually dead and decaying with flowers growing out of their orifices?
I get an idea.
We're spitballing right now.
You take 12 homeless men and dress them in costumes, and you just murder them in front of them.
I'm
not a performance.
By the way, I have no problem with homeless people.
This is transmetropolitan.
Like you do.
This is transmetropolitan, folks. Actually,
just spitball.
Throw it up, see what sticks.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it's a spitball session. We're not judging here, right?
12 homeless men and children. We could do children too. That's fine.
Not.
So, Anne, I know you're traveling on business, and some of that you can talk about and you can't, as far as what you have on the horizon artwork-wise for people to check out. Why don't you give something to the audience that you have upcoming that they can perhaps see, if that is the case?
Well, I want to say something that I didn't get to say on this podcast yet, is that I'm very cyclical. So I'll go through like a couple of years where I just can't even like sleep. And then I'll go through some years where I don't do much. And I'm kind of coming off of onto an offshoot. I got a new studio that has air conditioning. So up until now, have been working in an old warehouse that's beautiful, but in Texas on the Gulf, like it is hot, and I would come home and be crying and pissed. So I got a new studio that has air conditioning. I love to go there. So I'm kind of starting to make some more stuff. But anyway, I just wanted to say that. So I'm kind of on the upswing. I am making something for this hotel in Galveston. They're opening, some friends of mine are opening up a new hotel, and it's called Hotel Lucine, and it's like kind of a mid-century modern hotel, for lack of a better term. If they hear this, they might like kill me, but it's like a boutique. And so their concept is to have like some art in the, like real art in the place, and you can buy some of the little things and stuff. But I'm making something for one of their flex rooms, and it's kind of weird. It's like working towards with a commission where you have to, do you like this? Like, I'm not used to that, right? Like, I don't really give a shit if you like it or not, but I'm trying to do that because, like, you know, to be cool.
Helps pay the bills, right?
Yeah, well, sort of. it pays for itself to be made. And I've wanted to make this. So they're like these 3 kind of Rococo looking mirrors. And I've been kind of obsessed with this mirror film that you're supposed to put on your, on like your shower to like make it look gold and antique. I imagine that Trump's whole house is covered in this stuff. But I love it. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like the
especially if it's cheap,
everything.
I'm sure.
Yeah, it's cheap. It's cheap enough. And so I'm using that and making these kind of round mirrors. There's 3 of them mirrors, and then the frames are really gaudy, and they have for you a taxidermy kind of head on the top. So that's kind of cool.
Very cool.
And then I do have something coming up that's kind of big, but I had to sign an NDA, so I can't talk about it. Like it's never happened to me before, but sometimes like when you make things, like the gallery or the place wants to have like a big press conference and kind of announce it. So we haven't got that far yet, but I'm developing something for that too. That's kind of a lot of work. So that's what I've been doing.
Sounds stressful.
But I mean, it is, but it's kind of fun. Like I said, like COVID, like whiny COVID, but like it stopped art too, as far as like show. Like I had a show when March 13th, which was the day that the world shut down. I was in Plainview, like having the huge show opening, and like then like there wasn't anything. So anything that was scheduled got pushed off, right? So it's there's kind of a backlog. And I wasn't one of those assholes who went into the studio and got real creative and made stuff. Like I organized my socks. Like, you know, like I didn't. I mean,
I think we all kind of did similar things.
We got through it,
Right, we all got through it.
Some people are like on, you know, social media, like and look at what I made, and you're like, wow, like I couldn't even like think about it. Like I just wanted my kids not to fight.
Yes.
And to like barbecue something good.
Yes, that sounds 100% like what was happening in my life at the time, for sure.
I had to sneak my wife out of Italy, and she was 6 months pregnant. So I get where you're coming from.
Oh my God, that's insane. That's like way different than me being in Plainview in Texas.
I mean, is it really though?
I mean, maybe it's the same thing. I ate
persecution
5 nights in a row because that's
all
all there was.
Well, you're a saint for that. You might as well join up with the Roman Catholic Church, because that's
like the only
sainthood right
place
there.
that had a bar.
Well, that helps. That helps anything go down 5 nights in a row. So
I think a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
I think 5 nights in a row.
I think we've come to the portion of the program. Well, we're not necessarily. We're going to a very fun part in the program where I like to actually ask our guests some random questions, and some of them are related to things in their trade, and then some things are outside of the box. So
I'm so nervous. I
it is a fun game.
That one thing was a band.
This is going to be a fun game. I promise we won't be.
Do one of those lines of cocaine you got in. It'll be fun.
First,
Say that again.
We got to start with a bump before we get started. So
I just drank a small bottle of wine.
There you go. That'll work. So what are some of your favorite artistic periods? We'll just make it easy to start with. Historically.
I love the Rococo and the Baroque period. The Baroque has so much drama, and like everything was just over the top. And then the Rococo is so frivolous, like just pink and frilly, and nobody gave a shit except for the people who were starving in the streets. But that's cool.
Right. So of course, as is.
Periods. But I also, you know,
here we are with that morbid love for death and the poor.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I also like the you know, Dutch and Spanish still lives were super important to my work. But I also really like when I was in college, when I loved like just modern, like mid-century modern, like kind of just abstract stuff.
Yeah. I personally found myself kind of gravitating toward, especially as I got older. Like when I was younger, I didn't have an appreciation for it, but like pop art, and it all kind of relates back to my love of comics. Really, to be honest with you, is kind of where that kind of started for me, and then some of those like palettes and implementations that they use in that medium specifically. But pop art is something that I've grown to even love more so in my adulthood and kind of lean into and enjoy. Specifically,
I think I love that a lot too, and I just talked over you. I'm sorry, but like some of the work that I did, like when I was trying to do real like tight paintings, I would like have a little bird and then like a little bubble and it'd say tweet tweet. Like I've also been influenced by that a lot. Like I like it.
Well, I was going to say there's many other types of pop art though too. Like some people just associate, they think Andy Warhol, for example, or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you get kind of into like those hotly contested debates, like is it art or is it not art? Whenever you're just screen printing, like the same item over and over and over. Well, again, it's a part of your artistic vision and what you're presenting all together.
Yeah.
Photography is an art. So, I would say that it lands on that side of things still yet, of course.
And I argue like pop art, when they're making the mass-produced stuff, it's like part of the whole picture, right? Like that's the point. It's like mass production.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And like, for example, I kind of love Jeff Koons and like his stuff. Like, I think he's maybe not like his newer stuff so much, but like, I kind of don't mind the fact that he has a painting factory, because that goes back to like, the old masters. And I like the fact that he did all that like gaudy shit in Versailles. Like it kind of excites me. Like, I don't know. Some people are like, but like, I don't care. Yeah, it happened. I liked it, and let's move on.
Well, it starts to kind of, I think that there's this movement in the art world, regardless. Again, I can apply it to music. I can apply it to figurative painting. I can apply it to just all kinds of mediums. And that is like, there's a movement to not like what's popular or trendy at the time sometimes too, just for the sake of not liking it because it's popular or trendy. I think that that's something that goes on. I know certainly in our generation, I know Brandon and I have had many discussions like that. Like just because, like, for example, and I'm going to relate this to music real quickly. Like somebody might not like be interested in a pop artist simply because they're a pop artist or because of like whatever image is there. But maybe if you would actually took the time and listened to their discography, and you would see that there's actually, artistic song arrangements. This person can actually sing. That's an interesting hook in that part. This is a catchy chorus. So there's things to appreciate about it, even if it's not your cup of tea,
100%. I so agree with that.
Avatar still sucks. It sucks.
I've never seen either of them.
Shit.
I have never seen either of them. I don't want to.
I don't either. I've seen
I just have no interest. It doesn't interest me for some reason. It just looks so
I mean, maybe the first
ridiculous.
one interests me when it was kind of cool, but now I'm like, dude, we've seen all that.
Yeah, like what else is there to tell?
And the next one's supposed to come out in 10 years, guys. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that one. James Cameron will probably be dead by then.
Fucking water, man.
All right, let's get outside the box. What's an interesting fact about yourself, Anne, that people would not suspect or assume about you?
Oh my God.
Oh shit.
This is a stupid question. I don't know.
She has an embroidered butthole.
I've embroidered a butthole.
No, you are. You have.
Oh, I am one?
No, you have an embroidered butthole.
Okay. I don't know. When I was in high school, I lived in Ecuador for a few months.
Oh, that's cool.
How did that come together?
I was a foreign exchange student. It was fun. Okay. That's where I learned Spanish.
That's fucking insane.
Yeah, it was kind of fun. And it was like in 90. I don't even want to say. It was before. It was like 1989 or 90. And so yeah. And so like, I think now if you went there, like probably more people speak English and stuff, but like I was like dropped in and I was like, oh my gosh, where's the bathroom? And pass me the pencil. That's like all I knew.
How did that work out for you? I mean, it had to be difficult even just in everyday life, especially initially. I
mean, I was 17 and like I was in a family, so they helped me like kind of navigate, and it was fun. And they go out at like 1 a.m. to party. And I was like 17, and like I would already have been in bed, but I partied some hard stuff. That's why I
would
can't
imagine.
drink rum and cokes to this day, is because I barfed up the Coca Libres into the thing. I won a dance contest. There you go. There's my thing. I won a dance contest to Madonna's. Oh my God.
Material Girl.
No.
Papa Don't Preach.
No, one of the old newer ones, like the disco one.
Oh,
anyway,
oh shit!
I know.
what you're
See,
talking about,
if
actually.
I hadn't been on the spot,
I wasn't a
could've
big
thought
fan of
it.
the '90s
Well,
Madonna, but I know exactly what song you're referring
Yeah.
to. It was a top 40
Anyway,
hit in
I
the
won
late
a dance
90s.
contest. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. That's me.
Did you find your Eduardo while you were there? Just for
No.
just for Jeff's.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't want to tell him, but yeah.
Don't tell Jeff about Eduardo.
We're still in contact.
You found the name Paco Espinez.
It's funny because my high school boyfriend's name was Edward, so that's
Ah,
why I was
a
Edward
Spanish
was
Eduardo.
crying because
Eduardo.
Yeah, there you go.
anyway.
And who would you put on your Mount Rushmore of favorite artists?
Oh,
So it's
I
4
heard
people.
you ask somebody that on this, and I was like, he won't ask me that.
Well, you're in a different
Okay.
field, so we haven't asked anybody. I don't believe that question in your field.
So, okay, my Mount Rushmore. There's 4, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would
Until Trump
say-
changes it.
Yeah, I know. Fine. Well, I'll do 5 for him. Okay, so I love Kara Walker, even though you said she was a bitch. I love.
Your words, not ours.
Yeah, that's right.
I do not like being put on the spot. This is really hurting me.
No, I hate it too. Yeah.
And then I can't remember their names. Oh my gosh. Okay.
You don't have to remember their names. You can just give us like what
At
they
least people
did.
that you like a lot. Yeah.
Okay, her name's
That's it.
Hannah. I can't remember Hannah Hooch, who did like the collages.
Okay.
There's another woman who worked with all the plastic and got the brain cancer, and I can't remember her name because I've had a bottle of wine.
Was it Hannah Hoke with the collages?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did I say?
You said Hannah Hooch?
Hooch?
Maybe that's the appropriate
No,
enunciation.
I don't know. I'm not good at that.
I just assumed because of the accent marks that.
Okay, so and then I hate you guys right now. I really do.
It's
I'm
understandable. Most people hate us.
Yeah.
I am going to put Rosa Bonheur on there. You know, the person who did all the horse paintings. I love her work. Is that 4? Please tell me that's
3
4.
so far.
Does it have to be an artist?
No. You can,
Okay. Oh, you know what? I will put on there
Melania
Bernini.
Trump with their jacket.
Bernini. I love Bernini's sculpture.
Okay.
That's lame.
Yeah.
No, if I had time to think about this and I'd known that you were going to ask me, then I would have had a really good curated 4.
To be honest with
Because
you,
I know that I missed everyone I love.
my choices would be boring, but I'm also not a person that's like actively in, figurative painting or anything like that I've done in the past.
My problem is that I love so many people, and then I'm real bad with names as a human being.
Me too.
And so, like, I'll be able to tell you, like, kind of what they did or the certain painting, but also I'm horrible at being on the spot. Horrible.
No, I'm here with you.
I'm the worst job
deer in the headlight, the deer in the headlight scenario that happens.
If I create my own chaos, it's fine. It's whenever other chaos is thrown onto me that I freeze a little bit. But I can't even remember names of songs, honestly. So
I'm pretty bad about that. Yeah.
Yes, I can't either. I'll be like that one. So
yeah. So
I can tell you lyrics. I can tell you melody. I can tell you like cool, it has this badass breakdown at like 2 minutes in or whatever.
Well, I could do that if you didn't ask me to, and then I'd be like,
on the spot.
So thank you for that.
Just as a finalization of everything, we elevated you to a new psychology level whenever we broke through that level, and then you flipped us off.
Yeah.
Okay. I just did
speaking
it.
to your character.
Oh, yeah, you did it twice. You did
double birds. Stone Cold Steve Austin over here from Garland, Texas. So let's go a little bit more on the lighthearted side of questions. Maybe you don't have to think about this one too hard.
Maybe I'll.
What is your post-apocalyptic weapon of choice?
My weapon of choice. I just want a dune buggy. Is that weird? I'll just run over people.
No, that's understandable.
No, that's actually pretty cool and very Mad Max of you. Maybe it could have some like lasers or something on the front. But I think I'm a dune buggy girl. We have a golf cart and I love it, and I drive it pretty hard.
Another weapon she's used against homeless people. Yes. So any FBI
agents I leave the blinker on.
That's where the animals come from in our exhibit. She runs them over in the golf cart for sure.
I just kind of people send me pictures of like dead birds and roadkill. I didn't ask for it, and I don't even think that's who I am. But apparently, everyone else does.
I actually think it's hilarious that people assume and then just send you pictures.
To be fair, like I do like the pictures of the dead birds. I have a weird thing, and like my friends will send them to me on my birthday. Look what I saw on your birthday, and I'll be like, "Oh, thank you." And I actually do kind of genuinely like them, but roadkill's different.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, nobody wants to see most of that, to be honest with you.
Way more guts.
Okay, you've been given the death sentence. What's your final meal? Include dessert and beverages, please.
Okay, I would like a pizza, home slice pizza from Austin. And I would like, to go with that, I would like a Art Car IPA. Nice. I'm not a sweet tooth person, so for dessert, I'd have some French fries.
Yeah? Okay. You got a beverage left.
Not bad.
You got a beverage.
Art Car IPA.
Oh, IPA and pizza is a marriage made in heaven.
I mean, that's like you're going home and going right to bed.
Yeah.
There's no sexy time, nothing. It's sleep.
No.
Night.
That suffice for that as well.
Well, it's sloppy. It's not good.
Me and Barrett lived together for a while. I can disagree with that.
No details, please.
I mean, that's like really boring, but I have a thing for pizza.
Yeah, anybody in their right mind does, for sure. Okay. Now, this one isn't that far out of the realm of possibility or believability, and that's the fact that we are being invaded by the alien species. What would you nominate as tribute? What would you nominate as the best examples of humanity? And you can relate this. You can relate this back to yourself, artwork, however you want to, whatever take you want to take on it. Whatever might be easiest for you, but what would be the best examples of humanity?
Like where we are right now?
That's entirely up to you. Like how I would, if somebody were asking me this question, I would do it, is I would probably try to choose something that would like spare our lives. So I try to go on the beauty side of things, but I wouldn't blame them for wanting to kill us regardless because we're stupid.
Is it just one thing? Am I just doing one thing?
You can name a few things. Yeah. No problem. If you want to do more than one.
I am embarrassed to say this, but every time I go to Las Vegas, and we already talked about Trump once, but that Trump Tower in Las Vegas is gold and sparkly and so fucking ugly and also so like beautiful, and I hate his face. But I love that thing. And it's weird. Like every time Jeff and I drive by it, I'm like, I wish I didn't like that. And I know I shouldn't, and it's stupid.
Yeah.
The Spanish Step. Okay, I'm going to come up with one more thing. Damn it. One more thing to offer up.
I would just offer up a dog or a bag of dog shit.
No, I mean, that's fair. I kind of did with the Trump Tower in Las Vegas. It's not even cool.
What if their sustenance is a bag of dog shit? You might have just saved the human race. So there's that.
You might have, yeah.
Oh, God. You guys are killing me here.
Yeah, we do that. That's how my dad killed himself.
Thank you.
It was this podcast.
Thank you for bringing that back.
It was my fault.
Okay, so there's this. This is stupid because no one will get this reference, but there is this cocktail bar in Galveston called Daiquiri Timeout DTO, and I live for their they have this shot of rum that's infused with bananas, and it's fucking good, and it gets you just good enough drunk, I say let's give them some of that.
Oh yeah,
I like
a
that.
shot of rum, a banana.
It could be like
rum.
a signed situation. It could be a signed situation where they're only going to die if you give them banana infused rum.
Yeah.
Yeah. Warfare on their people. No, I like your concept because instead of the aliens fucking us, we can fuck them now. So, very good idea.
That's true.
I don't know. I was just trying to think of things that I think about a lot. Like, I make him watch the American Underdog. I make him watch American Underdog over and over.
That'd be a slow torture to death.
There's one scene where he's like, why would God give me this challenge if I couldn't overdo it? And the only challenge I can tell that he ever had was getting a flat tire in the snow. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
Anyway, y'all, it's bad.
Yeah, he was packing groceries, and then he's the NFL MVP in 8 months.
Yeah,
God damn it, that's Kurt Warner. He's our American hero. Don't you talk bad about Kurt Warner. He's Missouri proud, even though he's from Iowa. He won that Super Bowl that one time. He did that thing with that football. We liked it. Shut up.
Man. Loved it.
Oh, God. Okay, ask me another question that I don't have an answer to.
Well, I do have questions that you may have the answer to, and the next question for you is, where can people catch your work at, Ann?
Oh. So, right now online, but I do have, like I said, the commission that's coming at the Hotel Listine. So if you're in Galveston, check it out. It'll be one of the only times I've had anything up in Galveston because I'm usually out from there. I do have check my website because soon there will be something big coming out that people can go and see, but I can't talk about it right now. But it's going to be kind of cool and it's a lot of work and I'm super excited.
Cool.
Very cool.
So check the website. I will update it when I can.
Now, is your website the best place for people to follow you and what you have going on, or is there social media that people should be following? Where should people follow you?
So probably my website. I am the worst at social media. I used to do a lot of Facebook before even Instagram. And then I got an Instagram and I'm going to do better. So you guys should all follow me on Instagram and then I'll do better. But right now it's just a lot of pictures of my kid from 15 years ago. But I'm trying. I just,
That's okay.
I started following her in her bio. She actually has her phone number, address, and social security numbers.
Blood type and a couple credit card numbers. Yeah. Thank you, Ann, for the new record player.
Also, you're welcome. Website is good. Instagram's okay. I post art stuff when I do it, but I post a lot of family stuff and just whenever I look pretty, I post a picture.
What's your Instagram handle? Do you know it?
I don't even know it. Wood Ancy, I think.
I mean, I follow her. I don't know.
Okay.
We'll put it up in the...
I'm not that. I don't know. I don't want to. I don't enjoy living. I like to post pictures and be but I'm just not good at that. I need a publicist to do that.
Well, it's free marketing, Ann. And
I know, but I'm terrible.
You should use it, Ann.
Thank you.
Well, Ann,
better.
Just hoping for a job, Ann.
Okay.
He'll take care of your social media for you. Ann, it was a pleasure talking to you today, and I really appreciate you doing the show, and you've been so giving with your time. I know you've been traveling, and I'm sure that's a hardship in and of itself, and the uncertainty of talking to two goofs like us for an hour,
hour and a
half. I'm glad to hear that, and hopefully, whenever you got some more stuff out in the future, maybe we can have you back on the show and catch up with you and see where you're at, and talk about some awesome works that you have to add to portfolio, and we can gush over once again. Thank you for everybody sticking around after the break, and I want to thank Ann Wood once again for the awesome time, the awesome conversation, and getting to know her and her artwork and talking about things she had on the horizon.
Yeah, she was great. With all this homeless embroidered butthole talk, I would have to say that she, even drilling that joke into the ground, that she was a fun little pipey up spirit. She was great. She stuck with us, hasn't dealt with either one of us in the past, and I gotta say, we are a lot to fucking handle.
We are, and I'm
glad. Josh has...
Oh, got the latest on Josh now?
Josh has entered the prison. Oh my God, the prison has entered him.
I saw this one coming.
Oh,
I saw this one coming.
Scott right in there. Got right in there. There is a guy named Jaquan and Ralph,
And they mean business.
and both individuals. Ralph is running the camera work.
So hopefully it's going to be on
spotty. It's a
YouPorn
bit
later.
It's
available on YouPorn on demand. We cannot put that on the ATI podcast channels because we get in trouble enough. It is with our dark sense of humor and our inappropriate jokes and so on and so on and so on. So that'll be for the YouPorn feed. All right.
Yeah.
So Anne was our fourth guest here on Women's Month, and I thought she brought a great variety to the show and conversation. It was nice to delve into some other forms of art that we don't get the chance to dive into. And, we had Maxine 13 on previously in the first season, toward the end of that season, figurative painter out of the St. Louis area. And now we've had Anne on, specifically Anne Wood, and she's really, I would classify her as a multimedia artist because, as we detailed in the conversation, she does so many different things with her work. It's really incredible.
Yeah, to see somebody work in all of those different styles and iterations, it's, she kind of
inspires you. Like, I'm kind of inspired by it.
I wanted to tell her before, so it was all very exciting whenever Jeff, her husband, was telling me about all this and showing me. But later I found myself just like looking at her work and certain things, like not like sadness or anything, but like you just kind of feel some of her artwork and what she's going for.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
Well, to know the context of like the deathbed work and things like that, and then her also talking about her parents passing, and then that in turn inspiring pieces, like that's what I do. I know that's what you do, Brandon, in moments of grief or processing or whatever the case is, and that's putting yourself into your work or your artwork, and it really adds to the beauty and the complexity of it all as well, and to my appreciation personally.
And she came from Galveston, Texas. And we found a literal person that I didn't know met our politics.
Yeah.
Even if she wasn't. But, it's still fantastic that she feels that way. It just kind of, it's like a unison that brings us all together, even though that I'm not back home.
Sure.
And it's beautiful. I love that I can actually get in contact with somebody that can speak true to what they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever you talk to genuine people and have genuine conversations, it makes all of this the more fun and rewarding and so on. So let's talk about future conversations and rounding out Women's Month, and that's going to be next week, next episode. We are on season 2. It's going to be episode 21, episode 74 overall, which is incredible to think we've done that many.
Yeah.
And that's going to be Mary Lee Wisnowski, proprietor of Earth Mother Health Foods. And this, of course, will continue June's programming in Women's Month. So I'm really excited to have Mary Lee on. I've talked about it up to this point, and I think she's going to kind of scratch a couple different itches for the show and then go down a venture that we haven't quite yet. And that's kind of holistic healing, health foods, and that sort of stuff. But Mary Lee's got a really unique background. She's going to be one of our more seasoned guests on the show as well. So she's going to be adding a unique perspective. And I think that people are going to really kind of gravitate toward her story. It's uniquely, I know this might sound weird, but it's uniquely American. It's Americana, kind of what she's endured, her experiences. She's not that far removed from Native American heritage as well. So, and her being of an older generation, she can kind of tell some tales there. And everybody, I think at this point knows at least some of our politics and can assume we're pretty passionate about Native American rights in particular, indigenous peoples of North American rights, people that have consistently been shat on in our nation in particular and have not been represented, cared for, or been given equal grounding or respect so many times throughout our history. It's insane to count, and we can all relate it back to just the specific, the most basic part of that is that a bunch of white people, most of our ancestors and what make up most of our genealogy, came over here and took land from them that was theirs to begin with. So but yeah, I think we're just going to get we're going to get in the weeds, and we're going to have kind of some rarefied air as far as conversation is concerned with Mary Lee.
She is the Elizabeth Warren of the ATI podcast.
Yeah.
She is true blue Native American, has never lied a day in her life about being Native American, has never tried to portray a race that is ever, you guys get the picture. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So, Mary Lee will round out Women's Month, and I think it's going to be a real strong finish to the month for us. Let's talk about some other cool shit that we've got on the horizon in the not too distant future too. And I think this is the perfect opportunity to talk about it because we have Brandon here now. And I alluded to some programming ideas and things that we were fleshing out. So since the last time I gave an update, lots of cool shit is in the works with Brandon, specifically in NODNARB'S CLOSET. It's going to continue rolling on, leaning more specifically into the D&D world, miniature painting, diorama making piece of things that Brandon's invested in. And you'll still get some of the silliness that you know from us and the occasional pop in from me. But Brandon's going to kind of take the flag and run with it. And he's already locked in his first guest for NODNARB'S CLOSET too, haven't you, Brandon?
Yeah, I have Culsifer. He's a dude that really inspires me. And he's probably going to listen to this bullshit and think that I'm a fucking little punk ass turd. But yeah, no, I really think I pitched several ideas and to the ATI podcast, specifically Barrett. And this is the only one that actually, caught any kind of like interest. So this is my last resort at trying to be a person on this podcast. It's something that I'm not interested in whatsoever, but if I can get any kind of notoriety from the 4 people that watch, I would love to be a part of this podcast.
4? Who's the extra 2 that all of a sudden started watching?
I would love to be a part of this podcast. No, I think Cultiver is going to be a great dude. He recently he did a mental health giveaway where he, asked what people are doing for their mental health as of late. And people put in their comments and let him know what's going on. And he gives away a big box, medium box, and then smaller box of bits and things that we can make our miniatures. Great. Seems like a great dude. Probably an asshole. I mean, he could
all
be.
The assholes do that sort of thing, of course.
He literally could be a dickhead. I mean, he could be like the biggest piece of shit that's ever walked the earth. But let's give him a shot. I mean, we won't go into it that way. I will, but he probably won't. So I think it'll be fun, man. And surprises will happen during that. And I pitched him to Barrett, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we don't want to give everything away in the kitchen sink too. So we're going to be leaving some surprises out there for you. And hopefully every once in a while I can convince Brandon to still yet watch a professional wrestling match and get his take on it, the absurd and some of the not so absurd and the actual good parts of professional wrestling that keeps people like me keep watching, even though 90% of it's shit out there nowadays. But stay tuned for that. And of course, stay tuned for the ATI podcast and the things that we got going. I know that I've mentioned that we're going to be making a lot of programming announcements going forward. We have got stuff, Brandon, mapped out almost until the end of the year already. And we're just waiting on a few confirmations for a few various guests, but I think we got a lot of cool concept episodes coming up. Some of it's, not too groundbreaking in the sense that, like we're going to revisit October again. We're going to do some horror themed stuff. And this year we're tackling some anniversaries of movies. So we're going 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and 40 years back in cinema. And we've picked out a movie from each year, and we're going to have special guests on to highlight those. Brandon's going to be a part of one of our episodes featuring one of those films that we've made a selection on with another special guest. And I think this is going to, and we're intentionally kind of like mixing up the panels this time. So there'll be, myself, of course, steering the ship, but 2 different people accompanying me each week that month and talking about these films. So looking forward to that. And I think we're going to revisit some of the true crime type stuff in November. So be on the lookout for those types of announcements. And then we got a slate of killer guest announcements prior to us even getting to that's coming over the next 2 or 3 months as well. So stay tuned, guys. We've been heavily focused on Women's Month and uplifting women here in June specifically, and just been kind of the meat of our conversations and matter outside of our current event stuff has been focusing in on this, but we're going to get back to...
We will be at the Trump trial. We will be...
although it's in August.
Special permission to clasp cuffs on his hands. And also to kill off Biden and welcome in his son as the second coming of Biden. So
Hunter Biden Jr., right?
Hunter Biden Jr. Well, it's gonna be Biden.
Biden's son, Hunter Biden.
Yeah, Biden's son, Hunter.
Back to the original joke in the open. Yeah. There we go. That's what you call a running theme, folks. It's comedy.
Yeah, and I'm gonna.
The fact that I had to explain it make it even funnier.
I'm going to bring it until the Colsifer episode, just so that he may not know what's going on.
Running thread. I got it. Yeah, that's highbrow humor, guys. Top shelf.
Top shelf.
All right, so we'll see if Josh is back from his humanitarian work next week. I mean, him and this virtue signaling that he continues to do here. You know, he went down and built all them fucking houses down in South America like he was doing something special, and then now he's serviced. He won't be back.
No, Ralph said it's just an... That's a helicopter. This just in, Ralph says no. More cigarettes, please. Commissary. There's a lot of bleeding like...
That's the prison cheering for Josh's performance.
Oh my God. It's glorious. Look at it.
All right.
Ralph is a good guy. He's a good guy. First hand, MSNBC couldn't have shit on this.
Man, I don't think MSNBC gets a pop like that. Like, I don't think they get that type of applause ever.
No.
No?
Never. CIA operated network, they don't do that. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, CIA, of course, government endorsed. So, folks, for this week, I am Barrett, Barry Insane on Instagram and Twitter. Follow me there. He's Brandon Stuart of Edaw's Inn. Follow him on Instagram. We've got him tagged in our shit all the time, so you know where to find him. For this week, we are out of time, and until next time, good night and good luck.
Hey, this is Josh from ATI Podcast. For show updates and news about the podcast, follow us on social media. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/ATI Podcast 22, on Twitter at podcast_ATI, on Instagram at the ATI Podcast, on TikTok at ATI Podcast. DMs are always welcome. Have a question for the show? You can always email us at atipodcastquestions@gmail.com. Stay safe out there.
This is Barrett from the ATI Podcast. Each week, Josh and I discuss current events, pop culture, music, TV, movies, politics, sports. Nothing is out of bounds. You can also tune in to learn about rising artists, small businesses. Whether it's music, graphic design, filmmaking, or even a brick-and-mortar mom-and-pop shop, we will be spotlighting folks and their endeavors. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Anchor, or anywhere you enjoy your podcasts. Just search ATI Podcast. We would like to thank you for your continued support, and as always, please stay safe out there.